Okay, my name's Steve Elak. I'm a retired title examiner and title researcher. I'm doing consulting on the side. I've been doing it for over 40 years of my life. And over those years, I've worked with a lot of surveyors. And today, I was going to introduce you to two of them. One I've known for about 37 years at least. His name is Mel March. We'll be introducing him shortly. And the other is Eric Simonson with Rampart Surveys. I'm currently working with Eric, and I do work with Mel still. And what we're going to do is introduce you to these folks and have a little chat with them. Let Mel talk about all his years of experience, things that he'd like to talk about. So this is going to be mostly about Mel with me and Eric asking Mel questions and maybe answering some too. So hope you enjoy it. It's very non-professional. I'm not a professional editor or photographer or anything like that. So it's going to be pretty much a homemade video. But in the meantime, like I said, enjoy it, and hopefully you'll find some value in this.
I'm Eric Simonson. I was born and raised in Colorado Springs. My father was a surveyor, had Simonson Surveying. My brother was also a licensed surveyor, and we all ended up being surveyors. And I'm very interested in the history and I don't want to call them old timers, but the surveyors that mentored me and that I've always looked up to. And Mel March is one of them, and we're here to learn more about him and talk to Mel.
Well, excuse me, I'm Mel March, and I was born in Colorado Springs, grew up here in Woodland Park and Deckers area of in the region, and lived here my entire life. I actually kind of had an indirect start in land surveying, and that is that when I was in high school here in Woodland Park, I had a drafting teacher, a teacher that taught the drafting, or whatever it's called nowadays, but back then it was called drafting and drawing mechanical drawings and so forth. But I kind of excelled at that, and the teacher was very supportive of what I did, and eventually somewhere along the line and I don't know who or where he got it, but he got a transit, an old just a girly transit or something, and brought it into the school for a demonstration. And we in the high school up here, we turned some angles and down the hallway and different things like that, and kind of a little bit of exposure to some surveying like that, and then back well, and after I got out of high school, about a year after I got out of high school, I was looking for a job, trying to find anything. It was hard to find a job, but a friend of mine told me about Fred Gloth, and that Fred might be hiring someone, and so I went and applied, and he took an interest in me because of my background in that drafting and drawing, because he wanted to benefit from that to draw maps. And so I went to work for him, but I didn't start doing drafting. I started painting his house on the outside. That's how I started. And then eventually he got me into the office and drawn some maps and so forth. But I think back about how life was. Back then there were no computers as we have today, but he did have an old Smith Corona Marchant adding machine, and I didn't know anything about it, but one day there was little time left in the day, and I had completed everything that I was supposed to do that day, and I decided to do a little cleaning around the office, and I was cleaning up and everything, kind of organizing papers and dusting and everything, and all of a sudden this old adding machine thing came on, and paper started spitting out the top of it. And I did not have any idea how to turn it off. I didn't know what was going on. So I eventually unplugged it out of the wall to stop it from chewing up all the paper and thing. But that's kind of how I started in surveying. I mean, I guess that's at the bottom. So, but I continued working for Fred and getting more exposure to both office work and some field work, and then I worked there for about a year at that point, and then got drafted into the Army, and amazingly, I ended up getting into AIT, advanced training, for topographic and geodetic surveying. And as far as draftees in that class, I think there were about 20 guys or something. And I was the only draftee in there. Everybody else had enlisted in the Army to get into that field. So I was very fortunate to be able to get into something like that. And so in those classes, anybody that knows, that's been in those military classes, they're very intense, and they cover a lot of material in a very short order. And you know, it's 8-hour-a-day school or whatever. And but it was mostly about geodetic surveying, and that was my first exposure to more high accuracy stuff. And we did things with T2 theodolites, wild T2 theodolites, and we would have to turn angles when we were doing triangulation or anything, and we'd turn the angles multiple times. And it seems to me that we'd turn like 30 direct with the telescope direct, and then we'd turn the same angle basically with 30 times with the telescope reversed, and then you'd mean all those angles, and all of those angles, it was like any angle that varied from the mean by plus or minus 3 seconds or something, you threw it out and started all and remeaned it. And you ended up having to have at least 10 sets that fit in the criteria, and that was high accuracy surveying. And I also was exposed to the first distance meter that I'd ever been exposed to at that point in time. And they were microwaves. They worked off of microwaves, and I can't remember the make or model of those distance meters, but there was a master and a remote. So you set one up at wherever your instrument was, that end of the line, and then you had another one, an identical one at the opposite end of the line. It's like the old tellurimeters, really. But these things were like this big and about that thick, and you powered with a big car battery, and so they weren't very mobile, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But you'd measure 25 or 30 miles with them. I mean, so it was, they were made for long distance triangulation, geodetic surveying. But you get all the numbers off of those, and then there was a lot of processing after the fact to get down to where you had an actual distance. And so, but there was a lot of good exposure there, and a lot of things that I remember that one of the things that caught my attention, I remembered, I don't remember the details, but we had to know 28 different constellations, astronomic constellations, and their alpha star and beta stars, their brightest star and their second brightest star. That was part of the knowledge we had to have for, you know, navigating and figuring out locations based on celestial bodies. Real interesting material. Of course, now all of that's been replaced with GPS surveying. So that having to know astronomic stuff is kind of a lost art, I think. I don't know if anybody still does anything like that at all.
No, and I didn't have to really learn that
Yeah.
like you would have my brother Norm. Knew the constellations like you wouldn't believe, and I think he was a little older than me.
And I think back about, or think about that once in a while and realize that I really don't remember any of those constellations. Big Dipper and Little Dipper. I still find the North Star.
That's about it for me.
But that was an interesting aspect of that school and so forth. And
Did you end up going back to work for Fred Glauth?
I did. After I got out of the Army, he actually contacted me and asked me if I would come back to work for him. Because he knew that I was getting close to getting out. And so we arranged that I would, once I got out of the service, I'd go back to work for him. So I did that and then worked for him for, well, I maybe should say that I was in the Army from 1971 to 1973, and then after that went back to work for Fred and worked for him until 1978, like in the fall of 1978. So overall worked for him for about 8.5 years.
Were you licensed then?
At the end of that, and I took my state exam in April of 1978, and actually back then, those exams were 2 days of exam. The first day was math problems, basically calculations, and it was 10 questions, and in that 8 hours, I had time to get 9 of the questions done. And that you could use a calculator that had trig functions on it, but you couldn't use anything that was programmable. I didn't mention working for Fred Glauth, for a long time we didn't have any calculating devices. And everything, all the math was done with a book of trigonometric tables and lots of scrap paper is what I've always said. So you learned exposure to trigonometry and law sines, law cosines, and different things like that were just beat into your brain, so you knew them. The good news about that is that you develop this ability to kind of logically approach a problem, and where with calculators or whatever today, you push buttons and a number spits out the other end, and those that are not paying attention just assume that's the right number, and it isn't always. If you didn't punch the numbers in right to begin with, you know, junk in, junk out kind of thing. But at any rate, after latter part of working for Fred, probably in about 1974 maybe, he managed to get an HP 35 calculator, and that was just like such a miracle. But in today's world, it's pretty antiquated. But that calculator had one storage register, but it had all the trig functions, and that was the real bonus, because
Yeah.
you get trig function and then you put in a distance or something, you convert slope distance to horizontal distance and different things like that with that calculator that you were doing all on scrap paper before and with book of trigonometric tables. So that was such a huge change in the surveying world. I mean, that was one of the early things that really made a big difference in surveying. Was first the calculators with trigonometric functions, and then probably next or about that same time came distance meters that were in the private sector market. I mentioned the one in the military, but those, for the most part, the private industry, the private sector could not afford those distance meters. They were just, priced for military use, or maybe perhaps probably the Bureau of Land Management probably had some, and different things like that. But the average surveying company couldn't afford them, and
Well, how did you measure distances then?
measured all the distances with steel tape, a 100-foot or a 300-foot steel tape. So, and that in itself is the technique of doing that, and the things that had to be considered is an involved process. You had to, first off, you had to pull a certain amount of tension on it. Those things were calibrated for having X amount of pounds of tension at both ends, because it's a metal thing, and you can't. I mean, it has a stretch factor, or but also the fact you can't leave it sag up and down over the bushes and everything, because you have to measure a straight line, and so you had to put a lot of oomph into pulling the tension on that the steel tape, and particularly the 300-foot ones.
Oh man. And the temperature correction.
And then you had to do a temperature correction, which was part of the same thing, that the shrink coefficient and so forth for that steel tape was a factor of how much tension you put on it and what the temperature was. And so you took those measurements along with measuring the distance, and here in the mountains, and first off, you map distances, as we all know, are on the plane, on a flat table. Their map distances are like this, where all you got to do is look outside and know that any place around you is not like that. It's up and down hillsides, and here in the mountainous areas, it becomes even more of a factor. And so, but you needed to get dimensions or distances that were all converted to, or eventually put on a map on a flat surface. And so you, what we would do is you take a vertical angle, so you measure the angle above or below the horizon, along with your horizontal angles. You'd also have to measure the vertical angles, and then you take the cosine of that vertical angle times the slope distance that you measured, and that gives you the horizontal distance. So so much of that is antiquated, now it's all done internally in the machines that we use, the device that we use. But so we measured distance like that until I think maybe Fred Gloth got a first distance meter in '74 maybe, and that was a HP 3800, which was a
suitcase, like, right?
Yeah, about this, about that long, about that wide, and so thick. And you'd have your instrument, your theodolite, mounted to the tripod for turning the angles, and then you'd have to take it off, and then put this distance meter on the tripod, you know, the same tripod, same setup, and measure your distance. But that was kind of an antiquated thing in the sense that it you had these. Did you ever use one of those? Yeah, and you had this knob that you turned it to a certain. If you're going to measure tenths of a foot or tenths and hundredths of a foot, you'd turn the knob to that location, and then you'd dial it up and watch this needle come across in this analog device. That once you centered that thing, then that's where then you would read on an analog thing. That's where you would read what value there was, and you write that down, and then you switch it to the to measuring tens of feet, and to go through the same process, and then hundreds of feet and thousands of feet.
But it didn't really spit out the distances, did it? Wasn't there dots that you had to transfer into the? Remember that? Yeah.
I don't remember.
You used
I
it
don't
more. I
remember.
used it like in the 80s, but yeah, it was.
I used the HP 3800 for years.
Yeah, so you.
A lot of years.
I remember getting the signal how it was key, and then however you transferred that to the tenths, hundredths, tenths, and feet.
But that distance meter, I'd measured in a couple instances, or a few instances, I measured over 20,000 feet with it.
Gosh.
And you measure to a mirror, or a series of mirrors, you call them a prism, and they were, it was actually mirrors that were put together so that there was several of them in a case, maybe this big around or something, but there was, I don't know, 6.
Yeah, 3 in each one, then you stacked them, right? I don't
And then-
know if
Then
they
you
had
stacked
something
them,
for
so
it.
you had 3 prisms together, and then when I measured 20,000 feet, I put 2 of those triple prisms together. So I had 6 of those prisms at the opposite end of the line, and that distance meter would only read up to 10,000 feet. But you knew from a USGS map or something that you were measuring from this top of this ridge to the top of that ridge. So you knew generally how far it was based on that. So you measure something and you come up with 9,365 feet, you just add another 10,000 feet to it. And it worked wonderfully for
So
us.
in the old days, they measured with chains,
Right.
physical chains,
Right.
and the accuracy of those has to be way off. You couldn't stretch them that far, especially over a long
Correct.
distance.
But they were. There was an effort to try to, keep them level, measure on the level, and so forth. And of course, those old Gunther chains were literally links of like a chain. They were like a wire figure 8, and each one of those was 0.66 feet long, and then there was 100 of those in one chain to make 66 feet.
How thick were the diameters?
Not very.
Not very thick.
No?
8-inch.
Clothes or a coat hanger
Yeah.
kind
Oh,
of
really?
thickness.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I
each
always
one-
imagined these
No,
big
not a
iron
chain.
things
Not
that
a-
anchor with.
Well, it was a link, but not the type of link that most people would
Right.
think a chain would
Right.
consist
Okay.
of.
I
and
never saw one.
I'll bring one in and show you that
That's
they're
good.
really
Yeah, okay.
interesting. And
a Gunther chain.
Okay.
And they this is a sidebar,
Okay.
but it's interesting that the BLM still measures everything today and measures and do a lot of stuff metrically. But then when they put it on their plats, they still convert it to chains, because that's what's the constitutional law, that the dimensions are shown in chains. And so kind of interesting.
chains and links, yeah.
Chains and links.
Yeah.
So when Jefferson ordered the government surveys, right?
Right.
And in that legislation, there were specifics on how it was to be done
Correct.
And he came up
regarding
with
the chains and everything else, right?
and
Correct.
he came up with the rectangular system, which is
Okay.
impressive to me to this day.
Right.
That still
Yeah,
is
Jefferson and some of his buddies came up with the rectangular survey system, which is still in use today.
Do you have questions? Do you want to change subject and bring
as
something
far
up?
as licensing goes, when you took
Okay.
your test, did you have to take the SIT, which was the surveyor and training test first?
No,
You took it all at once, 2 days in a row.
there wasn't an SIT program when I took my exam.
I knew it was kind of close to that, so I was just curious if.
So yeah, it was two. I'd mentioned that the first day was 10 math questions, and the second day was 25 questions that were on the legal aspects of surveying, basically, and those. And I seem to remember that you had to draw a little plat. They gave you some criteria for drawing this survey plat. So you had a drafting part of that, one of those 25 questions.
Well, how many surveyors were around back then? Any idea?
I don't have a real knowledge of that, but you know, surveyors even yet today are a minimal number of surveyors compared to engineers. And I don't know. Do you know the kind of a ratio or something?
No, not anymore. I can relate the numbers pretty good. Like Fred Gloth was 6237,
Right.
and he got licensed in 1965. My dad's was 3480, and he was 59 or 60. So that's how I look at. Even yours 15672, and we know what year. I had it written down, but my tablet's not working.
Okay.
Your license was in 80? No, 78.
1978.
78. So that you just the numbers, and they're not consecutive numbers. Of course, mine's
Right.
38,000 something. So
But
that's how
each
we can-
number represents a surveyor?
yeah, we
Yes.
know, but we know when
Did
those.
they start at 0 and went to
No,
1?
Well, there was one.
I think it
One was the first.
One. Was the
Okay,
first
so
one,
the
but I-
number, the license
sequential.
number tells you how many were there at the time you got licensed.
Correct.
Okay.
So
And
you
what are
use
they up
that.
to now?
That's not. That doesn't mean they're still active or
Right.
even still living.
Right.
But that's how many licenses had been issued up to that point.
Yeah. So what's the number today? Do you have any idea?
39,000 some, I think.
39,000?
39.
But those registration numbers are inclusive of both land surveyors and engineers.
Engineers didn't have a surveyor's license then?
Well, they could combine. You could take the
It
test.
used to be that you could combine them. It used to be in the very early years. If somebody was a registered or licensed engineer, that gave them the authority, whatever, to do surveys, which
Okay.
has prompted a lot of problems for.
That's right. PELS is what's on the cap. So if you look
Yeah.
at Whitehead, it's 2692, and that's kind of was a cutoff date. I know Wayne Clark was 4842, and he was going to take the test at the same time, the PLS and the engineer, and that's about when they stopped it. And my dad was a
Okay.
reference on his application, and then they quit issuing or letting you test for both at the same time. So that's just what I know about it. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm going to insert that. I own some land out in Timber Mesa, and we had a copy of a survey done by Alan Miller. He owned it.
Okay.
I think that he got paid for a job and got land instead. So he
And
carved
he did
it up.
that quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and he carved it up into 35s basically and sold them off. And when he signed it as engineer. And I always wondered, like, it's not really a survey. It probably is, right? Because as an engineer, he was also a surveyor, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably at that point in time.
Yeah, it was in a.
Yeah, and this was 5076. So I never seen the engineer part of that
No,
on,
I
on a
didn't either.
plat. But he could have had both. He signed
Okay.
hundreds, if not
Yeah,
thousands,
a
of
bunch of,
plats.
a lot of Indian Creek, Cripple Creek Mountain States. I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff that's, you find the caption.
What do you got on your list, Mel? Is something you want to talk about?
Well, I just had a couple things on my list, but,
You told me Victor is one.
well, Victor is a topic that
Take hours.
Days.
Days.
is something that I would like to talk about, mostly for the perpetuation of my knowledge about Victor, because I've done a lot of work in Victor. And then there's a lot of issues in Victor, you kind of alluded to, take days to talk about it. There's a lot of issues in Victor that some of them are literally survey conflicts or differences, but there's a lot of problems in terms of, I mean, beyond that, there's a couple different additions to Victor that are properties and lots were sold in those additions to Victor, and the plat is a preliminary plat. There's no official city council approved or any other approved document for that addition to Victor, but the lots were sold under that auspices of a preliminary plat, which was, you know, so how there's a really kind of a question, I think, that today that wouldn't happen, of course, but have to wonder what the legality of that was, right, like chain of title thing right from the beginning. But those lots have been resold multiple times based on that bogus product in the first place. So
Was the preliminary plat recorded? Is that
the preliminary plat was recorded,
okay?
but recorded as a preliminary plat, not as a final plat or anything. It was, of course, that was El Paso County at the time. So I mean that's one of the problems in Victor, but there's also other problems where there's well, I'll step back a minute. The town site or the city of Victor as a whole, Mineral Survey 7839 or something like that, which was the placer claim in there, that they were selling lots in there. If you look at some of the deeds, they were selling a lot of those lots before the town was actually platted. So, but they would sell it as lot 5 and block 6 of whatever, but the town hadn't even been platted yet. And then you couple that with the problem that the railroads went through Victor, particularly the ones that I think of as the Midland Terminal Railroad and the Florence and Cripple Creek Railroad. And but the Florence and Cripple Creek Railroad was actually physically there before the city of Victor was platted. But you look at the plat of the city of Victor, the railroad doesn't show up on there. But it was there because the railroad was completed a year or so before the city of Victor was platted.
Where would a map of the railroad be?
Good question. There's a couple resources that I'm familiar with. One is, well, I don't know about the Florence and Cripple Creek Railroad plats or maps, but I know that the mine had multiple plats or maps of the Midland Terminal Railroad, and I'd gotten some of those from the mine, but then when they changed ownership. I mean, that was when it was Golden Cycle owned it, but once it changed ownership, then the newer owners were not willing to share those. So even though I went back and asked them several times about trying to get something, looking in their records for stuff on the Florence and Cripple Creek Railroad, never was successful in doing that.
What?
Somebody's yelling down at the downstairs.
Downstairs? Thank you.
So the,
What?
but the, I couldn't get any records from the mine, and I don't know if there are any on the Florence and Cripple Creek Railroad. I don't know if they have any.
And I
But
never knew
because-
anything about it really until you showed
Because,
it.
because they would not, they wouldn't allow me to look in their records, or they weren't willing to share anything. So I don't know whether there's any records there or not, but I do know that they had an abundance of records on the Midland Terminal. And in fact, I got a copy of several of the maps / plats of the Midland Terminal as it went through Goldfield and Victor. I wanted to take those maps when they were available and take them and scan them into the records in the clerk and recorder's office, but the mine was willing to let me do that. The other end of that was not willing to let me do that at that time. So, not sure why, but
Yeah.
So, and as far as other plats, maps of the Florence and Cripple Creek Railroad, I came across reference to a book that's called the Book of Deeds that is referenced if you. I have a couple books, textbooks on the Florence and Cripple Creek Railroad. That a couple of them that were kind of historical things and a record of the railroad from Florence to Cripple Creek, and which, by the way, was the first railroad in the district. But in those books, there's a reference to this Book of Deeds, it's called. And I went through all kinds of research and so forth trying to find this Book of Deeds. And I finally found it, but the last that I was able to establish was it was owned by a gentleman that lived in Crested Butte that he was willing to sell that book for $5,500, and it's like that's not gonna. I'm not gonna be the buyer. Although that book should be in a museum or in some place that's readily available to those that can benefit from it. But he's a book collector, so he had no desire to share that. But that book, and I've seen excerpts out of it, that book truly has maps and legal descriptions of the right-of-way from Florence to Cripple Creek.
All the way up.
Yes.
Oh
So
my.
it's an invaluable book from a record standpoint. Apparently there was only one print of it, and this guy has it. And the last time I talked to him, he was going to sell it to somebody in Europe. Somebody in Europe was interested in it, which was like,
What good would it do them?
right.
Well, didn't you mention at some point when we worked on one of the railroads that they're formed by acts of Congress? Is that true of the Florence Cripple Creek one also?
No,
They can be private?
those were private railroads.
Okay.
because the Florence and Cripple Creek changed. Let me back up and address the owned by acts of Congress. You know, when there are railroads that transcontinental railroads, but when they were trying to get railroads across the nation, those were congressional backed railroads. I don't think the more local railroads, the Colorado Midland, which was not a transcontinental railroad. I mean, it did connect, you know, a lot of places, but it wasn't transcontinental. And then then even more local than that, like the Midland Terminal. Those were local railroads, and they were privately owned. The Florence and Cripple Creek and was owned by the Florence and Cripple Creek Railroad Corporation or something like that. But that changed hands. It was sold at different times and sold.
Was just the railroad bed sold, or the land on either side too?
Well, and that's an interesting thing about the Florence and Cripple Creek Railroad, and any of the deeds that I've looked at that related to that refer to the railroad, they would say like 50 feet on both sides or either side of the existing tracks. Well, there are no existing tracks today, so it's pretty much impossible to replicate that.
Is there a roadway along the railroad bed?
In some instances,
Oh.
but not
All the way down?
not always. And then of course, I mean, the Phantom Canyon Road is the railroad bed, if you will, for the Florence and Cripple Creek Railroad.
Okay.
But does that truly follow the actual tracks?
Uh-huh.
And it's probably deviated with time.
Is that a state road, Phantom County, or is that
As
county?
far as I know, that's just it's now just national forest unless it's on private land. Because it once, at some point in time, it reverted back to, like in the national forest, it just reverted back to the forest. And I don't remember when that happened or how that happened. But with that said, though, the Florence and Cripple Creek Railroad sold that to multiple different entities that eventually Golden Cycle Land Corporation owned, or Golden Cycle owned. But I was under the impression that was only in the places where the railroad crossed private land or mining claims, whatever. But all of the deeds that you read, if it has any reference specifically to it, they talk about, you know, 50 feet on each side of the tracks. And a lot of that stuff I did in Victor that was on that Joe Burns project, and you and I worked on that a lot. That was how those deeds referred to that.
Okay, let me just ask something. Before the plat of Victor was filed, the railroad existed. There should have been deeds to the railroad for that strip, right? How did the railroad get title to the land they put the railroad in?
Well, there were deeds. However, you can't find records of those deeds. The only real reference to those is in that book of deeds. But recorded documents, and if you do find a recorded document, and I've looked at a lot of those in El Paso County, and of course those are on the old microfilm I mean, it's just half of them you can't read at all. I mean, it just
yeah.
terrible copies. But they, once again, the deed is a deed through such and such a mining claim lying 50 feet on each side of the railroad tracks.
So they laid the tracks before they owned it.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But and then they sold properties in Victor and some in Cripple Creek, but that overlapped the railroad. The blocks in in the city overlapped the railroad, and nobody acknowledged that.
I imagine there's deeds for part of those lots that are in the railroad.
Correct.
Yeah.
And there's, I mean, I had one project up there in Victor that, well, was and I know we've had some discussions about this. There was 3 or 4 lots in, lots whatever, 10 through 13 or whatever it was, in such and such a block in the original city of Victor. And then in through time, it ended up that there was only part of those lots was deeded to somebody, and another part was deeded to somebody else. But then eventually the assessor's office, because it said the westerly, one half, or it wasn't even that clear. It was like the it was
Portion.
a portion of the on the west side of the railroad, or something like that, was deeded away, and the assessor eventually just chopped those properties in
I remember
rectangular
that,
pieces on each side of the, half and half. Well, the original deed that transferred that away didn't read that way. It read on the west side of the railroad or whatever. And there was a lot of research on my part and discussion with you, Steve, and with
I remember that.
with the Linda at the assessor's office, and all kinds of things, trying to get to the bottom of that. I looked through old transcripts. I mean, they have in the assessor's office, they have these old, I don't remember what they're called, but they're these ledgers where you go in there and you look, the kind of from day one when something happened and how that was deeded off, except that those are Teller County. And so if anything that predated that, you got to go down to Colorado Springs. But those so it becomes nearly impossible to really narrow those things down. And there's other parts of Victor where that railroad, the Florence and Cripple Creek, is still an issue. I mean, it goes just north of City Hall. There's that rock cut and old railroad grade through there. You can see it as plain as day. But it's not clearly, I mean, there's no deed that defines that, but it's there. And then it goes over and, of course, goes through the rock cut as you enter into Victor. But the original railroad didn't quite follow that. And so those things become complex issues when you're talking about ownership, who owns what, which side, and all that. And I've done a lot of research on that, have a lot of notes and records related to that railroad. And by the way, the books that I have, I mean, they're hardbound, like a textbook. One of them's called 40 Miles to Fortune, and I can't remember what the other one's called, but they're about the Florence and Cripple Creek Railroad. One of those, well, maybe both of those I bought from the Colorado Railroad Museum. And they have excerpts of the maps and so forth out of that book of deeds on parts of that railroad. So that thing around Joe Burns's, that area, eventually I kind of relied on those maps that were in that 40 miles of nowhere, which was a copy of the thing out of the Book of Deeds. Because there's no better records. I mean, you can't find anything that you can support more than that.
So every part of the railroad was dismantled, and the railroad ties, there's no evidence of where it really was.
Well, you know, if you went in there and excavated, you might find cross ties and so forth in some places, but nobody's going to let you do that, you know, and you can't afford to hire a backhoe to go in there and do that. So there might be some evidence if it
Eric will go out and dig a 4-foot hole.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know about through that rock. And then plus we know the metal detector is pretty worthless in some of those areas, and there's a lot of railroad spikes that are
Yeah,
around
railroad spikes,
subsurface
tin
on the
cans,
surface. Yeah.
nails, you name it. You find a lot of stuff that's not very valuable. So,
Wow.
but which takes me to another conversation about old methods, and the difference between today and then was just talking about a metal detector. In my early career, metal detectors didn't exist, at least in the private sector in my world. What we used was what was called a dip needle, and it's a cousin to a compass in terms it's a magnetic needle in a box, but instead of holding it to where you're getting it to point north, you run it along the ground, and when that needle points down, then theoretically there's something that's metal magnetic under the ground. So
Because the needle's been magnetized.
I remember my dad crawling around on his hands and knees, and by golly, if he couldn't find him. I've got one in my truck. If maybe I'll show it. I do have one in my back.
Do you
yeah,
really?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I haven't seen one in quite a while, but
I think of those all the time when I'm using a Sean stack because I'm grateful.
yeah. Now we have the metal detectors that are amazing, but that dip needle. I mean, how many corners? You know, there's a lot of controversy today about the pin cushion effect. Of several pins set in the same general area representing some corner. Well, in 1970 or 65 or some number, we couldn't just go out and find another pin there very easily. I mean, if it wasn't evident on the surface, and you might measure into where it should be and dig around a little bit, but if without a metal detector that we have today, you could have been 3 inches off of this existing pin and not know it. And today, you go out and find it. So now, and then you end up with 2 pins in the same place, or more or less.
So somebody put a pin in there years ago.
Right.
Right, a rebar or something maybe.
Yeah, usually iron pipes, probably.
Or pipes.
More.
And
in the older days.
and then over time, it gets covered up.
Yeah.
Just from wind and erosion
Everything.
and
Yeah, everything. In construction, maybe there's a house built, or you know, they're grading the road. I mean, you name it. Anything that moves the dirt at all. And then there's wind and rain and erosion kind of stuff. But
well, it could just be an inch down, or it could be 4 inches down.
Right, and I know Mel sets him.
or that far down.
We set our corners pretty flush with the grade, and not everybody does that, and there's a
Right.
reason for that.
Okay.
So that's already
So
in
it
a year.
doesn't take
can
much
get,
to cover it up.
Exactly.
Right.
It's a whole different world now, though, right? I mean, with the equipment,
Yeah.
and the searching, and all the stuff you can put together.
Do those GPS things help where to look?
If you know how to use it, right, Mel?
Yeah, and
Maybe is that facetious?
There's nothing magical about GPS. It has to be oriented to the specific property or properties you're working on. And you can only orient that by locating existing pins or property corners, enough of them that then you can kind of calibrate where that subdivision is at, if you will, or those properties are at relative to your GPS observations to help you find the one over here. But there's nothing, I mean, people all the time, you hear this all the time, people go, yeah, I took my GPS out there and I looked for the corners, or whatever, and it's like, well, how did you get the data to back that up for the latitude and longitude that you need for that specific corner to establish where you're looking?
People don't, yeah, they don't understand. They always call and ask, what are the coordinates of my lot corners that the county has on record? Where do I get those? And I said, well, not by the GIS map for sure, certain. So
Well,
it's misunderstood what.
You can take a GIS map and you can put your mouse over it and everything and interpret, you know, and it's going to come up. If you take the assessor's maps and you you point at a certain place, you point at a pine tree or a house or a property corner, a theoretical property corner, and it's going to show coordinates or latitude and longitude for that position. But there's absolutely, that is so misleading that it's just absolutely a total waste of time. So, but people do that all the time. I mean, they're not going to pay him or pay me to do the survey because they'll just use their own GPS and survey it.
Well, those are taken at sea level, right?
Right.
The GPS, yeah, there's only one point that's, well, we don't want to get into that really, but it's
Right.
not, at 8,500 feet with the projection, it's totally not accurate. Once you get over that one, only one point's really over that, the GeoID or what it is.
Right, but it's, but then there's also, is it NAD
Oh, the 83.
83 or what?
Yeah.
What mapping projection is it on? And I mean, it gets so complicated that you can't take your little handheld Garmin and go out there and, if you find corners, it's because by accident.
Do you do improvement location certificates now?
Do I?
Yeah.
Well, I have. I don't do much of anything right now, but
Okay.
I still do them. But
Yeah. So,
I send them to Eric.
Thank you, Mel.
well, it's my understanding under state statute now you have to locate at least one found monument.
Two.
It's
Two?
been like that for years.
Yeah, and I see a bunch of them that don't have any. But
Right.
they don't care if you go 600 feet away, 1,000 feet away, or different block corners, but you gotta show
You got to
two
tie it to something.
to the statute. But that's not, doesn't
It's
happen.
been like that for
Well, yeah.
30 years or so.
Yeah. Well, when your dad was doing them, it wasn't a requirement, right?
Well, he passed away in 85, so it may have been coming around where that statute, Title 38, I don't know when that came to fruition, but
Yeah, I don't remember either, but
when you had to start setting rebars and you had to show corners for ILCs and that sort of thing. You used to be able to just do
I remember
certificate
seeing
of
them
survey.
where they might be 2 blocks away.
Yeah.
Right. But then you could tie that over to there by measuring and get to that point.
That's
Okay.
how
some
you're supposed
basis,
to.
you know, I mean, back in 1965 or something, they just went off the fence lines or, you know, the curb lines or something like that. And unfortunately, some surveyors today still do that.
Yeah,
And
and even
That's a
we don't
shame.
even know. Yeah.
So,
with
so the cost of doing one would depend on where the property is. If you're in a newly subdivided lot in Woodland Park versus a lot in Victor,
yeah, that's
totally different world.
yeah, that
Or even a lot in
you may not
Indian
even
Creek.
find corners to
Well, there weren't
tie
any,
to.
originally there were no property corners set on those lots in Cripple Creek or Victor or any of the
Really?
other towns.
even Woodland Park probably, right?
Yep, on the original,
original stuff.
Fosters and
Plating,
Edition and
there were no pins or property corners set.
So you have to go off of section corners and things like that, quarter sections, and tie
Yeah,
it to that.
if they can even be related to the town or city plats or whatever.
they're not, even though they may say so. You know, as far as the aliquot part and what they really are out
Yes.
now as they
Yeah.
sit today, it's a mess.
Yeah, and I mean that's why doing ILCs is A lot, I mean, people do them. It's been bread and butter for a lot of folks for a long time, but Eric and I both have kind of gotten away from doing those because of, unless you're really familiar with a given area and know where some pins are at to, you know, if I'm doing it, if they
Or you can charge appropriately
yeah, and
for
that,
your time.
And that's,
That-
most people won't do that, right?
Right.
And I straightforward. I can't compete, but I can do this, and or you know, and the counties are saying an ILC is okay. Well, if look at the certification on an ILC, it's not a land survey plat or improvement survey plat, and you know, Mel and I don't know, we've talked about that. And,
Well, the title insurance side changed a lot of that too, because they're accepting ILCs to give survey protection, not getting the information they really need for that property.
and they shouldn't call it survey protection, is what I say.
I
Right.
know.
Well, and
Well,
This
the
isn't-
exception that they take normally, they always did, was anything an accurate survey would disclose. Well, an ILC is not an accurate
No.
survey.
Yeah,
it's
it
not a
is.
survey.
So,
Says it on
but they're
the face of
accepting it because of competition. See, so the market changed, and there's more ILCs being done with very little liability because they're only certifying certain things, right?
Well, and
They're not certifying acreage
and
or
I think I've
corners.
told you this and others that, you know, if they come back to me and go, well, your ILC says that this fence is on the property or whatever,
Mhm.
then you did a survey, and I'm going to be going, no, I didn't. I have
Right.
no liability in that because I did not do a certified land survey plat. And the county, even the county building departments and stuff are starting relying on the ILCs, and it's like, man, this you're backing yourself into a corner where that's going to cause some real problems.
Yeah, locally I've worked with them, and I think I've got it across that don't say the ILCs, you know, to use it as a site plan, you're just asking for trouble. And I have to be most respectful to my dad, who had an ILC business that was very successful at it, and that was back a long time ago, and
Yeah, but how often did he have a claim on one of his ILCs?
not many over the 30 years or whatever.
Yeah.
Not many, but there was.
Was some. Yeah,
But
and there's always somebody willing to sue.
now I've seen zero liability on those, and I've seen some really bad ones. And don't you agree? There's no. I haven't. I'm like, gosh, that's a terrible thing, and there's no liability on it. And there is, because of there is no liability just because of that certification. It's only certified to one entity and only good for so long, and it's not a land survey or an improvement survey plat. So I don't want to.
Yeah, that's another topic.
I know.
That's kind of.
We could do hours and hours talking about.
I mean, and when you see them where they're just there's an ILC that's done, and then we go and follow up with a survey or surveying the property next door or whatever, and it's like that ILC was just absolute garbage. I swear that they had to stand down at the road a half a mile away and draw something out and call that an ILC.
And then you find all the corners.
Right. And fences going across it that are,
Mhm.
and somebody else's barn that's partway on the property.
Yeah, all of it. Yeah,
You know.
it's.
It's been over an hour now. I was wondering if you guys want to take a little break, and we could come back as soon as we're done breaking. Sound good?
Sounds fine to me.
Okay, yeah. We were talking in the last segment about finding pins, monuments, things like that, when they're underground in the old days when we didn't have metal detectors. And Mel was mentioning this device, which Eric happens to have one handy, and he's going to demonstrate it for us. All right, so show us what you got, Eric.
So this is a dip needle that Mel was talking about, and my dad used, and it's a compass, and
Yeah,
you
show
put it on the
over
ground.
here.
Oh, okay. So you see the compass in there,
I do.
and then this is the top that you look at, but it's hard to see.
That's okay.
And
I
there's
can actually move the camera close. Can you make it go off like on his clip there?
Did you get it to go off over the?
On here, is it working?
No. I don't know if that's.
Does it take a battery or nothing?
No.
No, it's
no,
it's a magnet. It's a compass.
It's just a magnetic needle.
There you go. Well, it's spinning a little bit because it's finding the edge of the tablet I got here.
This is metal here though. Can you try
Yeah.
it? It's not going to work on there?
And that doesn't have much.
Doesn't have enough iron on it?
No. Mhm.
Okay, yeah, we probably should have tested that before I tried to show.
Well, we could-
So the idea is that as you go over some metal, here, let me
There it
bring-
went. There it's going. You see how it's straight up and down.
Wait a
It
minute,
found.
I'm going to zoom in. I can use the zoom on here. Here we go. Let me move this down to that device. Okay, I think
So watch
we've
when
got
I-
it.
When I move it from side to side, it gets weaker, and when I get closer, it points.
Oh, that little
Yeah, the
red
dot.
thing.
Mm-hmm. There, so you do that, and that's where you would dig your hole, looking for the corner.
Because it's pointing downward.
And in theory, it's pointing down at a property pin.
Okay. Right, excellent.
Or
So
a
that's what
magnetic
it,
rock or a nail.
Yeah, that's
or-
right.
that's the old school metal detector. Okay.
I guess I should have brought the Schonstedt in. I could do that next
Let
time.
me unzoom it here. Get back to where we were. I think that's pretty close.
We're done with this.
Yes, thank you.
Well, no, obviously those things worked. I mean, in fact, the Schonstedt, as he's referring to, is a name brand of a metal detector.
How far down below the surface might it pick it up, do you think?
That?
Couple inches?
No, more than that. You
More?
think that would go a foot to an iron pipe?
It might.
Yeah,
to
it's
an
just
iron
got
pipe
a
or
kind of
something.
limited.
I've found pins with metal detector like over 3 feet deep.
Oh my goodness.
But the metal detector is typically more reliable and more efficient than the dip needle thing. I mean, but they're not. Neither one are without failure. Because I've dug up, like Eric has, you dig up a lot of
Debris?
debris. I mean, nails and tin cans and door hinges. And then the other thing is, you get over towards Guffey along County Road 102 and so forth, going to Guffey, and a lot of that area over there around Culver Mountain and all those. There's so much iron ore. And you go on further west over toward Black Mountain and everything. There's so much iron ore in that country that it's just like it screams at you all the time. And I mean, the metal detector does. And I've dug up a lot of rocks.
Yeah.
And in fact, working up on Witcher Mountain that we have real connection with, but up there on Witcher Mountain, I made so many trips up there carrying all this stuff up that mountain that I got to the point where I would not carry the metal detector.
Yeah, it's,
Because it was
sings the
worthless.
whole time. Yeah.
So, but
And other metal around it, like a utility box or a T-post, because most people drive a T-post in right on top of the corner.
Uh-huh.
That's very challenging, whether it's a dip needle or a Schonstedt. But we know what to do.
Okay.
we just put it and throw one over our shoulder and put our own.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So,
So, Mel, you had some things you wanted to discuss?
yes.
Okay.
I want to start because you were gracious enough to get me this information. I want to talk about one particular area over by Guffey or towards Guffey. Kind of, it's really kind of at the northwest corner of Clover Mountain, but it's north of County Road 102 and just west of the road that goes down into Clover Mountain off of 102.
104.
104, okay. It's just west of that. And again, north of the county road there. And that is that there's been a variety of surveys in that area for years that have there's a lot of conflict between the surveys. There was, of course, obviously the original USGLO survey, it was, what, in the 1870s sometime, that there's some, in that region I found some stones that I considered original stones. And in other places, didn't find anything. I mean, of course, there's a lot of rock in that area, so you're looking for a rock in a pile or in a mountain of rock, and you could be sitting on it and not know it was a real one. And but nonetheless, in this one particular area, more or less at the northwest corner of Clover Mountain, there's the section corner, which I'm just going to make reference to it just for an awareness. It's the southwest corner of section 31, 1472. Is, if I'm looking at these papers right, but that in that area, some years ago I did a variety of projects. Started off surveying an easement and then surveying something else and everything that was related to the southwest quarter of that section 31.
Excuse me. Here's the printout of that
Okay,
map
thank
you're
you.
referring to.
Thank you.
Let me put it in front of the camera.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me see here how that works. See, it's that blue area
Yeah.
that we're focusing on.
Lower left corner of that is the section corner.
Okay, so anybody wants that, they can copy that out. Here you go.
So, but that area has been surveyed multiple times by multiple different surveyors. Of course, as I just mentioned, the original survey was U.S. Government Land Office in 1870s or whatever that would have done the original survey. And then through time, there's been multiple different surveyors that have done work in that region. The surveyor that did Clover Mountain, which was last name of Clark, but he established what he believed was the southwest corner of the section, of that section 31, and then did Clover Mountain subdivision to the south and east of that, and then and I don't remember off the top of my head the sequences, but then there were surveys to the north, north of this property, that were done by other surveyors that evidence suggests that they supported Clark's location of that section corner, at least mathematically. For example, there was the west quarter corner of section 31 was there, but set by a different surveyor. But one of your past,
Kevin?
Chris
Thompson?
Thompson, I think, had set this. But a variety of different surveyors in there that kind of supported that Clark southwest corner. But I went in and searched for that and never could find Clark's. Like, he theoretically set a pin there or found a pin or something. I never found anything there. But that's in a pile of rock. I mean, you know, kind of like boulderish type thing, and you know, metal detector screaming at you all the time. Couldn't find anything. Went back like 3 different times looking for it. Never found it. But also, then to the west over here, there was a surveyor that came in and did some surveying, and I don't remember the times, but you'll understand my point when I get to it. I'm going to say 15 years ago or something, maybe 20 years ago. But he did some surveying in there, and he found a pile of stones in this general area with like a limb sticking up out of it, and he called that the section corner. But like 40 feet south of that is another pile of stones with a limb sticking up out of it. So
40 feet?
yeah, except that I don't think either one of them is a section corner. I think what they are, my opinion is they're location corners for mining claims, because this area has a lot of old mining claims.
Okay.
That's my wild guess. I don't know that for a fact. But he used one of those kind of arbitrarily in my mind. I mean, I don't know why he used one of them versus the other one as what he called the section corner. And but he, according to his survey plat, he remonumented that. Well, he did not remonument it. There's no new monument there. So, and I tried to talk to him 2 or 3 times, and he never would return my calls. So I don't know what came of that. But at any rate, I couldn't accept his determination of that section corner in anything good faith. I mean, so I relied on right the southeast corner of that quarter is a Clark cap and rebar. That would be the Culver Mountain Surveyors, his original thing. And then over here at the other section corner, the section corner is there, and that's a stone. And I ultimately, I took this, I basically kind of single proportioned, you know. I had pins up here, and I projected those south, and I had the Clark pin there and the section corner over here, and I projected it west, like a single proportion kind of thing, and determined that was the best solution that I could come up with. That I couldn't find anything original, no original evidence in my mind. The reason I'm talking about this is there's a variety of things south and west of here that are relied on this one guy's survey that I consider bogus. And I'm trying to, more than anything, bring that to the attention that if anybody does any surveying in there, they're going to have to be real careful about what they use and how they use it. Over here, further west, there's a lot of mining claim corners, stones, mining claim corners. And like most of them, they have different ties to section corners, quarter corners, different things like that. I don't recall that they had any ties to this section corner, but they had ties to the quarter corner and different things like that. And that seemed to be largely ignored by the guy that used the mound of stone and the stick, or whatever.
That's township corner?
Well, it's...
I've been thinking about that. 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36.
Oh, it would be. Yeah, it would be. The township
Just made
corner.
me think of that,
Yeah.
it being in 31.
Yeah, so it would be the township corner. Yeah, I kind of forgot
Just,
that.
yeah, it just more, adds more to the equation, right?
Right,
And you,
exactly.
yeah, you've already done all your studying on it and everything.
And this work that I did there was easily 10 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
if not more. And but it's one of those where it's like, if I don't want every other surveyor in the future to come in and reinvent the wheel. They need to be aware that there's problems in there, and maybe understand how I came to my conclusions on what I did. The only other thing that I was going to do, never did, because, you know, most of this work I was doing free gratis, because the landowner, the client, was not paying me to just go back to, you know, the Gulf to start surveying there and work my way north. So,
But you wanted to get it right, and you were researching it, and
Yeah. But it would be the quarter corner. I think it would be the quarter corner that would be down here. It's supposed to be a government brass cap. And I was going to go in and tie that in, and never did.
But it sounds like what you've said so far is that not all surveyors agree with each other.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's
Absolutely.
number one. Number two, this is kind of interesting because I've been working a lot with Eric, and he'll get into something, ask me some questions, and then we start digging into it, and then we finally come up with the idea that, what were you hired for? You know, but both of your minds are of the sort where I can't let this go. That I got to keep digging, you know, because
Yeah.
something's, you know, and you kind of want to fix it all, but nobody's paying you to do that, right?
Yeah, and this, I mean, I've gotten, you know, I get very anal about that. It's been way too much time and so forth trying to resolve things that maybe don't have a real answer, because you can't reestablish the original position based on any concrete evidence. So you have to step back and go to the next best evidence. And along those lines, I consider that this survey of Clover Mountain, there was the original 1870-something USGLO survey, and then the next, sequentially, the next survey was Clover Mountain.
1970-ish, right?
Right.
Late 60s, yeah. So that holds
So
some
I mean,
weight,
that's
right?
a 100 years difference, but that was the two sequential surveys, in my mind. So of all the other surveys in here, the USGLO was the first one, that was the oldest one, but then Clover Mountain was the next oldest one, and it was like, I just kind of set, you know.
Yeah.
And by the way, down here, a quarter of a mile, which is just, well, no, it wouldn't be there. It would be over here. This other guy set a 16th corner in there, and 10 feet away from that, what a Clark's 16th corner.
Yeah, more historic, maybe.
Oh, and I figured that Clark's 16th corner was absolutely more historic.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he had set that in the 1970s, and this other guy was in 2010
Yeah.
or whatever.
Pincushion effect.
Right. But this guy obviously didn't even bother looking for that, in my mind. I mean, because it was not, it was reasonably easy to find.
Yeah.
So,
Especially if you
I mean,
pull
and
a-
it was, it was from here to your hall closet apart,
Oh.
And it's like you almost walk that over the top of one to get to the other one.
Well, and if you do your research and pull that plat, I'm sure
Well,
that's what I assume we would go look for right away, since it was said and accepted as that for all these
well,
years.
and this guy, in my mind, tied into that pile of stones or over here with the stick in it, or a limb sticking up out of it, and called that section corner, and yeah, there's surveyors and there's surveyors.
Beware. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I wanted to talk about that a little bit. There's other things in the Guffey region, and all over that southeastern Park County that I've worked in and around and so forth, that they all have sometimes some complicated matters that are hard to come up with a real conclusion. But and by the way, my records have all of that stuff in my computer records and so forth, so it's there. So, but beware if you're working in there.
Yes.
Be careful.
Thank you. Yeah.
And so the other thing I wanted to talk about, and I don't have a whole bunch of supportive stuff with me, is the county boundary, the west boundary of Teller County. And I know you and I have talked about it some in the past, because you ended up finding some documentation that helped me to find my documentation, that so on and so forth. But
I remember seeing a map that was drawn. I don't know if you drew it or where it came from, but it had a line going north to south or south to east.
I might have,
North.
I may have given that to you, that I got out of Park County records.
Could be.
And not in the county records, as much
That's
as I
right.
went to the library in Bailey and came up with an old map of that county boundary. But it was, I had been researching this county boundary for several years, because out there along the west county boundary there are these wooden posts that vary in dimensions, but they're roughly 6 inches square and 30 inches to 3 feet high or so. And the ones that are still eligible say Park on the west side, and they say El Paso on the east side.
Well, let me ask you a question. How was the boundary first created?
Well, I'll get to that.
Okay.
So it's pre-1901 then, if it says El Paso County.
A pre-1893. Yeah. And I had found a lot of those posts along that boundary for, no, it wasn't 1893, it was like 1898.
Nine.
99.
But the
Teller
county
was
says
formed-
1901.
Yeah,
right?
but El Paso and Park existed
Separated
Mhm.
in 1899.
first. No,
They make Teller
that's
County.
when Teller broke
Right.
out.
Yeah, that's
But prior to that, the state statutes created the counties, right?
correct.
Okay, so you're following the county boundary from the original state statutes between El Paso and Park.
Correct.
Okay,
And how the statute is written, and I'm not quoting it, but it generally says something about on the second standard parallel on the north end of the county with the intersection of the middle of the South Platte River is the northwest corner of the county.
that was way back when.
That was when they were established in the 1880s or whenever they first came up with counties. Actually, the counties might have been established, at least El Paso and Park County, before Colorado was a state,
Okay,
when it was a territory.
that's amazing.
Uh,
Well, what about the river itself? Couldn't it have meandered or stuff since then?
well, of course.
No.
But I seem to recall it in those notes, it said that they marked a cross in a large boulder in the middle of the river as
Huh.
their starting place.
Wow.
And then they went due south to the third standard parallel. And along that's like a 20.
How do you determine what due south is?
Well, at that time they did it by making observations, solar observations.
Okay.
And that was the real standard for determining due north or due south or whatever.
Okay.
In the that era of surveying, the Thomas Jefferson thing,
Yeah.
that kind of evolved with using solar observations, and I mean it was refined with time, but by
So they didn't use magnetic north.
no, they used true north.
True north is the solar.
Correct.
And they were darn good at it, some
Yes.
right?
Yeah, and they used. I mean, I don't. On these records that I have, I don't know if they used a solar transit, but they actually developed a solar transit. And the government surveyors, the USGLO surveyors, use these solar transits, which they could observe the sun and determine north based on scales and so forth on this solar transit, that the average transit doesn't have those scales and stuff on it.
So it depends on time of year, time of day that you're observing the sun.
Yes, latitude and longitude. I mean, time is the real crucial thing. What time it is.
Because the Earth's turning.
Right. So there's. Did you get into calculating solars?
No,
Eric, with,
no.
with the ephemeris, the solar ephemeris, and all that.
No, I was around it when they were doing it,
That
and
was
it
back.
was
My
amazing.
state exam included one question that was calculating the true meridian or true direction based on angles and the ephemeris. You got to use an ephemeris, an old ephemeris. Every year they came out with a little book about this big, a paperback book about that wide, that you look in there, it had all these.
I actually
values.
have an ephemeris for astrology, for location of planets.
It probably
The sun would be one of them.
kind of related.
Wow.
But
I had no idea how it worked, but I had to have it.
But at any rate, I'm confident that they used solar observations to
Okay.
to
All right.
move.
So let's go back to point of beginning
Yeah.
of the
So
rock.
they then along, what would that be, 30 miles?
Due south 30 miles?
Yeah, I mean between one standard parallel and the next, isn't that 30? I'm kind of losing it
Yeah,
right now.
38 degrees is the baseline, right?
Right. But I mean,
38 to I can't.
I'm drawing a blank, but
That's
the
all right.
boundary
Me
of
too.
the west boundary of the Teller County, which was actually El Paso County at the time, was between the two standard parallels.
To what?
Two standard parallels.
Okay.
You got a parallel of
North?
like that's the second standard parallel, and then the one down
6.
south is the the third standard parallel. So they're every 30
Yeah,
36 miles, 30 miles.
haven't thought about that. I've lost
Yeah,
that.
but at any rate, every period of time or distance in this rectangular system, they would have a standard parallel and make corrections and correct things
Oh
up.
yeah, it's 6.
Oh, okay.
It's,
Because no two lines, I mean, section lines don't go true north and south. They do, except that sooner or later, if you keep, they're going to converge. They're converging like this. Does that make
Yes.
sense?
Yeah.
Because they're aimed towards the North Pole.
Right.
And if you do enough distance over the course of, from here to Wyoming, things are going to get to where they're going to
Gotcha.
cross. But so these standard parallels, they would make corrections, and you've perhaps seen
Government lots.
government lots are part of that. But it's also there are times when there's like a double monumentation or double corners at a township line or one correction line.
every 6 miles, right? So now I understand that we're talking about the township lines.
Right.
That's where I get away from the standard parallels. So that's township 12 and 13,
Right.
and that's 6 miles, and then they correct. I showed you on the one that's terrible.
I've seen it.
It's actually on a meridian that has correction corners that are 300-400 feet apart on the standard parallels.
That's
It's
why
just-
they have government lots across the top tier. of
Well,
the township
that's
already.
part of it, but it's also the fact that the top tier of the township, the township lines are not really a straight line; they're a concave, like that.
Oh,
in
I
part,
never thought
because
of that.
it follows the
Yeah, the
things
curvature of the earth.
Curvature of the earth.
Yeah.
So they start off in the southeast corner of the township and start laying out sections, theoretically a mile square.
So none of them are straight across.
Right.
They're all dipped down
Yes.
and converging.
Right.
Okay.
But they follow. They start laying out the sections in the southeast corner of the township. Start with section 36,
Okay.
and they build those sections to the north line, the north thing, and then they throw all of the air. They're measuring a mile and a mile and a mile and a mile, but they throw all of the air into the north and west boundaries of the township as far as in the sections. So you end up with
Government lots
along
the
that north boundary and the west boundary.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
I never knew
Because
that.
they're not standard quarter sections.
Right.
So, but
So they quarter all the way from the southeast all the way up until they get to that top
correct.
tier and create government lots to
Correct.
adjust for. Okay.
And sometimes those government lots will be more than 40 acres, and sometimes they'll be less than 40 acres, and
Yeah.
depends on where they fall on those correction lines.
They're pretty smart.
They
When
had,
they,
they had a
when
clue.
they created that
They
system.
had a clue, yeah, for sure. So that county boundary
Yeah.
again went due south
Yeah.
without any correlation to the township lines or the section lines. And there's been a misconception through time with other surveyors and so forth that west boundary of the county, it follows section lines. It does not. It does not. And that's like Sportsman Glen, which is west of Wilson Lake Estates.
Sportsman's what?
Sportsman's Glen.
Glen. Okay.
It's a subdivision that's west of Wilson
I
Lake
kind of
Estates.
seen it, but I don't know
Well,
anything about it.
And the westerly tier of lots in that subdivision are actually in Park County. They're platted in Teller County because the surveyor interpreted
Oh, yeah.
the county boundary as being the 16th line, and it wasn't. I mean, that's just one example of some of the
Well,
concepts.
what about Bear Trap?
bear trap, there's of course parts of it in Park County and parts of it in Teller County. And bear trap is one of the places that I've found a number of these old original posts. But bear trap does not define stuff up to the county
Section
line. They define it to adequate parts in a section.
Yeah, that's why some parts of the lots are in park.
And right, and some are in. I mean, the other part of it's in Teller County, but in that, and I've spent a fair amount of time, and it was a lot of years ago that I did look for a lot of the corners on the county boundary. But in that process, I went from the most northerly part that I looked for was Trail Creek Road goes from Lake George and goes north out of Lake George and goes up there and eventually, and it's in Park County then, but eventually goes up there and it crosses the county line. Up,
Indian Creek, isn't it?
It's just, yeah, and then you get up there and you get into the westerly part of Indian Creek. So up there where the county line crosses that Trail Creek Road is the furthest north I've gone in my efforts. And then I've looked for the county boundary corners as far, specifically as far south as through Sanborn's Ranch, Western Camp. But let me go back for a moment here and talk about what I, through several years of research kind of thing, but I was looking in the Park County records, in the old clerk and recorder's office up there.
Mm-hmm.
And down in the basement where they had a lot of the archive things and everything, up on this shelf there was this box, this little box that had on there, it said county boundary. And that, like,
Oh man.
and so it didn't offer a whole lot, with exception that in that was a receipt from Frank Costello. No. Yes, it was a receipt made out by Frank Costello where this
From Florissant.
from Florissant
Okay.
that a guy named Fred Kramer, who happened to be a deputy state engineer, paid Frank Costello for surveying supplies for surveying the West County boundary. That just said to me right there, it was surveyed by somebody that had a clue. And so that, I've got a copy of that receipt and everything. I kept a copy of it. All that.
So that's Costello? Was a surveyor?
No,
No. The
Fred Kramer, who was a deputy state engineer.
Okay.
And
Costello was a
Was-
famous
yeah.
guy in Florissant.
He
Right,
was-
it's
he-
Costello Lane that you
Yeah.
vacated
Right.
some stuff.
Right.
and
But
that's
he must
all
have
I
had
know.
some influence in Park too.
well, and I got in digging around in all of this. There was some kind of a conflict between Park County and El Paso County about where the county boundary was at, and I think, and I don't know this for a fact, but I think what it stems from is there was a dispute between ranchers, is what my best guess is, that propagated the counties getting together and say we got to have this surveyed. So El Paso
Well,
County,
if there was a fence running along there, it's almost like, no?
no fence.
I thought you were talking about fence posts.
Well, no, these are wooden pitch posts, but have nothing to do with the fence.
Oh, okay.
They're
You think-
posts that were set there to monument the boundary.
Wow.
Do you think Kramer did that?
Fred
The
Kramer
posts?
did that. I
Did
absolutely
the
know he did.
posts?
Absolutely know
Because
he
you
did.
got the receipt that said
Well, not for the posts. These were posts that were created on the ground, sort of like section corners. That, you know, they
Yeah.
carried this rock over there and then chiseled into it. Well, but this was, in some instances, if there was a tree that was standing there, they scribed into that. They cut it off and hewed it down into a square, if you will,
Wow.
and then scribed into it. Park on one side, El Paso on the other. But not only that, on the north face of it, they scribed in there the mile post, the distance in miles from the north boundary of the,
Holy shit.
Wow.
That's
along the
amazing.
and in some cases they labeled some as station numbers because their objective was to mark every mile along that county boundary, plus at crossings of important features, roads, stream crossings, things like that. They would set a post to mark and document that. So a station was somewhere where it crossed a physical feature that was they wanted to document.
Huh.
Here's an example.
Is
County
it-
Road.
I'm sorry. Is that the same stations that the CDOT uses on their maps for crossings? Or
It's
that's
just
different?
an arbitrary.
Yeah,
We all
they,
use different stationing.
yeah,
Okay.
and
Never mind.
they just named it. You know, the first crossing that they wanted to document was Station 1 and
Okay.
whatever.
So we're going south.
Right.
Okay.
But if I remember right, there are, according to Kramer's notes, there were 93 posts or something marked along the county boundary. In some cases, they marked, like they chiseled an X or something into rocks or a boulder or something. But in most cases, they set these wooden posts. If the post wasn't standing there, then they went over to somewhere and got an old pitch log and drug it over there and cut it off, planted it in the ground, and scribed it. And some of those are remarkable as far as how clearly evident they are today.
Did you actually go out and find all those?
I went out and found specifically between Highway 24 and the south end of Sanborn's Western Camp, I looked for like 28 different points, and I found evidence of 24 of them or something. So, and here's the other thing, they reference a mile out with bearing trees. And a lot of times I couldn't find the actual post, but I found trees that you're standing there, you know how it is, you look down there and you're looking at it and you're going, that looks like it's got an old blaze on it. And that one looks like it has an old blaze. And in the notes there's distances from those bearing trees to the corner. So I'd take the cloth tape thing and measure off, do an X in the ground, and start poking around in the ground with the pick and finding rotten wood in the ground. And that to me was the corner. That was the post. So I found evidence of a lot of those like that. And then in Culver Mountain, County Road 102 and at the county line on the south side of the road up on the hill there a ways, there's one of those posts.
Really?
Yep. It's kind of toppled over the rocks a little bit, it's my memory, but it's there. But then I found others in Culver Mountain that were well set, well established. I'm gonna, I could talk about that county boundary for 6 years.
Well, that's good. Keep going.
but-
What about did you tie all of these?
What I did, any place that I found the post itself, I tied the post in. If I found a hole in the ground, I put a 60 penny nail down in that rotted hole that's down there somewhere, and then tied that in. So I field located anything that I found.
Did you actually create a survey then of that area?
Only part of it, and I'll tell you what was the catalyst for some of that was the Sanborn's Western camps had hired me to establish where the county boundary was in the primary part of their camp, because they were trying to figure out, they were trying to build some new buildings, and Teller County would not let them do that without doing a complete development plan and a site plan and everything else to make it because there's no regulations, no zoning that accommodates a camp in Teller County. Although there's several camps, but there's no such zoning. So the county was saying, well, we won't let you build any more buildings. So they were trying to determine if it was where they wanted to build was in Park County. Park County was more liberal and would allow them to do that. So, so I was hired to establish where that county boundary was through the focus of the Sanborns.
Wow.
And part of that is I have a survey on that. But I don't have a survey. I didn't create a survey plat, if you will, of everything that I did. One of the factors was those where I put a nail in the ground stuff needs to have a real survey monument. And I wasn't going to spend $30 a piece for legitimate survey monuments, you know, out of my own pocket for those. And I actually had a meeting with Park County Historic Preservation, Steve Plute, and that you may know the name.
I do know him very well.
Yeah. And others over in Fairplay to talk about that, and they agreed to give me a grant for a stipend amount to help buy those monuments, and I never really did it. I suppose I could go back and revisit that, but part of that was probably when I started having health problems and so forth. But the most important thing is I guess there are several things, but most important thing is that there's a 40 years ago, probably people didn't really care where that county boundary is at, you know, one way or the other. But now when you're starting to get into different land use regulations and so forth, then it becomes important, more important. Yeah. And where do they get taxed? You know, those people over there in Forest Glen are getting taxed by Teller County standards, and they should be being taxed in Park County. I mean, as an example. Mm-hmm. And then what other regulations are applicable? Building regulations are different in one county to the other. What they can do with the land, the zoning regulations are different. A whole number of things. And that, again, that didn't, 40 or 50 years ago, that didn't matter a whole lot. Today, it's very crucial. And so, I think that the location of that boundary becomes more important as time goes by. And so there's that as a factor that I want to perpetuate my knowledge about that as best I can, so that it doesn't continue to be lost in time.
So the book you have, is that the one you found on top of the shelf in Park County that has that with the bearing trees and the courses and all that?
No, and thanks to Steve, he pointed me, we were talking about some deed, and I was asking him way down on the south end of the county, I was asking about any deeds that maybe would be somewhere, and Steve came up with a translation or a transcript of the field notes of Fred Kramer survey.
The Kramer, yeah, so it goes back to
And
Kramer.
those-
Wow.
And those notes, which is just legal sized paper with all this stuff typed on it, that makes reference to all those bearing trees and everything.
Was that recorded, or would it just? Yeah.
Yes.
In both counties, do you think? I'm interested
I
in
don't-
having those, so I'll.
I don't remember.
I don't actually recall this, but go ahead.
Well, I'll tell you to
I
look
like
'em
the
up again.
compliment.
Well, I have it in my records.
And that's
so-
public record.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm very interested, especially with the nails and where it is. And Steve Plute actually told me where to go find one where County Road 100 in Park turns into our
Yeah.
11, I believe.
Yeah.
It says it's down over the hill. I
And
can't wait to go see
Steve
that.
is all excited about those, except that he hasn't seen nearly what I've
Of
found.
course, he's
and
here.
he would be having to lay down on the ground and have water put on his forehead.
Me too. Right, I would be doing
So,
that. But yeah, we're on the same page historically. You know,
and
I think
I have that information. I have, like I say, I went to Bailey and got a copy of literally they had some rolls of some old blueprints, but they were the old blue paper with white lines.
Yeah.
Rolled those out on the floor. And I stood up on a desk with my camera and taking pictures
Wow.
of it so I could get pictures of this, because it was like 8 feet long or 10
yeah,
feet
that's
long.
cool.
It was the whole boundary?
Yes.
See, I didn't know they had that either.
And that's, so, the kind of the last part of my research along those lines is, one of the things that's kept me interested in the sense that, okay, what was the real story, what was the conflict between the ranchers and what ranch was that, and so forth. But also the fact that the county commissioners in both counties authorized that survey. And I've talked to a lady down in El Paso County about trying to look in archives of the minutes of the county commissioners' minutes during, around that era, trying to find any supportive documentation of that. And I still would like to do that. I still want to do that.
And that would be like a resolution or something that the
Well, I'm
they would
I'm
pass.
thinking more like the county agreed, the two counties agreed that they would hire this county or state engineer to survey the boundary.
So it'd probably be in both their minutes. then,
So you
most
would
likely.
think it would be in the minutes,
Yeah.
is my
That's
my
cool.
thought. I don't know that those
So
are
there was a
resolutions.
state engineer involved
Yes,
that
Kramer.
created these maps.
yes. That was Fred Kramer.
But, okay, let me go back a little bit. When the counties were created by, well, they, like you said, it wasn't a state statute because they were actually already existing prior to that.
Yeah, I'm thinking that they, at least Park County and perhaps El Paso County were created by when it was still a territory, when Colorado was still a territory.
Huh.
And, but
But-
there's
But
currently a
where
state statute.
where would the descriptions have been for those counties back when they were territories? There weren't.
That I don't know. But I do know that there's a state statute that defines every county in Colorado.
There is.
Yes,
So the statute has a description,
yes,
and the survey matches that description
Yes.
now.
yes.
Why would it have meandered instead of going down an adequate line? I know they did boundaries
Well, my
along
guess-
rivers.
My guess is that they wanted that boundary to be north and south, true north and south. So they picked a point logically at the north end of the,
So somebody
line.
went down and monumented what they thought was the adequate line.
no, they didn't care less about the eloquent line. They
Oh.
started at a specific point on the north boundary, on the second standard parallel south. And started there and then went due south to the 3rd standard parallel. And they didn't care, they couldn't care less the eloquent lines. Fred Kramer didn't. He didn't care.
Well, who would they have been? Somebody who is creating the legal description? They knew they weren't going in a straight line.
Oh, they were going in an absolute straight line.
Well,
That was the call on the, due south for 30 miles.
Yeah.
where would that put you? Past Sanborn?
Well, it ends up down where the county line crosses the High Park Road down, going towards Canyon City.
Yeah, Fremont County.
Down south of Culver Mountain, and where it intersects with Fremont County. But it's really Park
So-
County, Teller County, and Fremont County intersect.
So it's
there.
about 30 miles from the northeast
North end.
corner, all the, or
Northwest
the
corner.
north corner to Fremont County.
Right.
That's the number of miles that we
Yep.
would be crossing. And they thought they were going in a straight line.
Well, they did.
Fred Kramer drew a straight line.
Do you find that true with all your time and all of it out?
Generally speaking,
Pretty
yes.
good for the time,
Yeah.
probably.
Well, the map I remember going was like this and then this or something like that.
That's-
You know, it
that's-
crosses over the Aliquid line. Or somewhere near.
But that's not based on current survey. There are, if you look at USGS topographic maps, you're going to look on there and see where there's a little square drawn on there at various places along that county boundary.
And that's it.
And pretty much every one of those squares, you can find an old post.
So they knew it and they marked it on there.
When they did it with the
Quad.
USGS,
Mhm.
quad sheets,
Mhm.
yes.
Very cool.
And if you look at those, you can see that they don't follow the section line.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Uh,
Typically, yeah. Anyway, yeah.
So
So-
you have all these records
Yes.
in a computer?
Some are in computer, some are in paper form.
Paper. Oh God. What a treasure trove.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's why I wanted to talk about that a little bit. It's important that those are not lost
Go for it.
when I go to the other side. So whatever. So
It would be nice to continue that work you've done in the
Yes.
monumentation of it.
Yes.
And I mean, I'm getting up there, kind of, sort of. You know, I mean, who's gonna do that?
well,
Can we start doing it? Maybe.
perhaps so.
Yeah. I'm
But
very,
we gotta-
very interested.
You know, I personally I think that somebody has to foot the bill to do some of that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because the two counties definitely benefit from it, whether they think they would or not. Trying to convince the commissioners to spend money on something like that when they're going,
Yeah.
you know, whatever. I don't know how successful that would be.
We
But-
got so much work into it, it would be a shame to, with the knowledge and everything, somebody starting over again.
Yeah,
Competently.
people should not start all over again.
No, my gosh,
But
no.
there was a previous county attorney that's not there now, that you probably knew, I'm trying not to use names.
We know.
Doesn't matter. He's long gone.
That I mentioned this dilemma to him, and he says, I'm not going to believe anything about some 1893 survey.
Really, that's the gospel.
And
Right.
it's like, yeah, so he didn't really understand what surveys meant. But with that said, the other thing is that in those notes, Kramer's notes, there were several places where there were ties to aliquot corners. I mean, section corners and quarter corners.
Yeah, nice.
Not everywhere, but periodically there
Somewhere,
were
yeah.
such ties. Now I know a place where there was a subdivision done, and then I was in there doing some work and found one of these posts, these county boundary posts. And just for grins, I went and it had a tie to a quarter corner. So for grins, I went and looked for that quarter corner. And there was a freshly monumented quarter corner there in the neighborhood, but 100 feet west of that subdivision line, and some odd distance southwest of the newly monumented corner, I found a stone. It doesn't have, I couldn't see any scribing on it.
But did it match the call that you
It-
were tracing?
absolutely.
Yeah, that's way cool.
It's like you go out there and go, there it is. So, you know,
Wow.
so it was amazing. So how, I mean, those are invaluable,
Oh,
those
man.
notes. Now, I talked to Joe Velasquez, who's a BLM cadastral surveyor out at Canyon City / works for the U.S. Forest Service out of
Are
Pueblo.
these all old timers or what?
Joe Velasquez is younger than the two of us.
Yeah, but very helpful and
Yeah.
and call yeah.
I just wonder who's in charge these days. You know, at
Well, there's
agencies like that.
There was the chief cadastral surveyor in Denver was Randy Bloom, and I don't know who it is now.
It's already changed twice, I think.
I think so, but
Mhm.
Randy retired, and then there's been a couple replacements, and it's a BLM employee that comes up through the ranks and gets the job, and I don't recall the name now.
Well, who decides that?
Who decides on who's the chief cadastral surveyor?
Yeah.
It's
Who decides who moves up? Are they
It's-
knowledgeable enough to know
the BLM.
hierarchy?
It's a federal position. So it could be somebody from Wisconsin that comes here and takes the position.
Wow.
Seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
That's
whoever
what I've
works for
heard.
the Bureau of Land Management. But Randy Bloom, I talked to Randy Bloom more than once about this county boundary thing. He was quite interested in it. Talked to Joe Velasquez about it. I've shared those field notes things with Joe Velasquez. And that also, I don't remember the connection, but I had somebody call me from the Colorado Bureau of Roads to talk to me about that West County boundary and what knowledge I had about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do they put the sign?
Well, but it doesn't
Yeah.
cost any. Well, it crosses Highway 24,
Yeah.
but other than that, it doesn't cross any state-sanctioned roads.
Right.
But they still have an interest in it.
Okay.
And because these are, I mean, overall valuable records. And then, oh gosh, Wayne,
Oh, the
other cadastral surveyor
yeah. I've
local.
talked to him now recently. Wayne, what is his name? Yeah, Velasquez hooked me up with him.
Yeah. Well, he contacted me about the county boundary, and he was working along up by Pikes Peak, and I said, that's not mine. I don't know. But the east boundary of the county and the north boundary and the south boundaries follow eloquent lines.
Uh-huh. They go around Pikes Peak
Yeah.
eloquently.
But not the west boundary.
Yeah. That's amazing.
And I don't know that the county boundary, at least that west one, was not created before the region was surveyed from a cadastral standpoint and created sections and eloquent lines. I'm not sure.
So is that the?
Wayne Hancock, yes, absolutely.
I had to look because
Yeah,
I can't
I
remember,
couldn't
and
remember.
I don't know him
I worked
very
with
well,
him.
but
I worked with him and another one of his cohorts out off Cedar Mountain Road, and Joe Velasquez on a boundary remonumentation project out there. Joe and I lost a lot of hair, scratched our heads over that. So it was after the Hayman fire, and there had been monuments that were pretty well documented, but couldn't find them because of the erosion. It had been washed out, whatever. But any rate, that county boundary, I think it's real important to preserve those records and to perpetuate those records. So it's
So basically, the county boundary is a surveying issue that is not actually officially set. Is there still questions about where it is? Like between the counties themselves, like you said? I just remember Bear Trap. I've done stuff where we had to, some of them, I heard that the counties got together and said, well, if most of the acreage of the lot is in Teller, Park won't assess it. And then vice versa.
and that I don't know anything about.
You don't know anything about that?
But how do they know which side has most of the acreage? Because
Well, the map, there's not a plat, right? There's
Right.
just a marketing map that was used, but there are meets and bounds descriptions for
Bear
it. So how do you know where that line cuts through?
where do you know where the county line cuts through?
Yeah.
Is my point.
Yeah, so they estimate acreage and then,
Well,
Do
again,
this
that's
thing.
like over by Florissant and Wilson Lakes, and then that Forest Glen. The westerly tier of lots are in Park County, and they're all assessed in Teller County, and it's platted in Teller County. The original plat of Forest
it's never
Glen.
been platted in Park.
No, that plat is shows it as being a plat in property in Teller County.
I can't tell you how many times we probably insured lots in Wilson Lake Estates right along that boundary.
Well, it's
Saying
not
they
Wilson
own
Lake,
it.
it's Forest Glen, so it's a little different, but.
Wilson Lake has its own issues.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Wow.
another conversation, but